Silverstone is quickly becoming my favorite go-to company for really ridiculously high-end builds. How ridiculously high-end? Well, we have a thread on the forum where people are showing off the receipts where they've ordered the Blackwell RTX 6000, which is about a $9,000 GPU. I don't have that. I do, however, have not one, but two 5090s. And the Zeus 1650R power supply is what we're going to start with, but we're actually going to cover a couple other things. 1650 watts, 3 power connectors for these monster GPUs. And yeah, these are 600 watts each, so 3 times 6 is 18, 1650. Not going to cut it for 3, but we can put 2 in there, and that's what we're going to do. Good Lord, RTX 5090, yeah. It's really kind of bananas that these are 2-slot cards. I mean, all of the aftermarket cards are way more than 2 slots. They have 32 gigs of VRAM. 32 gigs of VRAM is a lot, but also 32 gigs of VRAM isn't a lot when we're talking about 96 gigs of VRAM in the RTX 6000s. That's why they're being bought. That's why they're being used for projects. And those kinds of projects are going on the Level 1 forums because we're all crazy people. This is the Silverstone Zeus 1650R Titanium. 80 plus titanium. Listen, when you are up against North American breaker power limits, you got to go back to titanium so that all of your watts are going into your peripherals. So this has 3 12V 2x6 connections that are available. So you know, if you're not using the 5090 at 600 watts or the RTX 6000 at 600 watts, you can run 3 of them. But there's a catch. So the thing here is like 1350R, 1650R titanium. The catch is actually on the label of the power supply, and it's really not a catch. 1250 watts up to 115 volts, greater than 115 volts, it is the full 1650 watts. Almost all of America is 120 volts. Not 115, not 110, 120. If you are somewhere that is 110 volts at the wall, this power supply is not 1650 watts. But if it's 120 volts, you should be able to get the full 1600 watts out of a normal 15 amp breaker. It's actually really easy to run a 220 volt outlet wherever you keep your computer, assuming that you have a way to fish a wire from your breaker panel to your computer. I mean, you know, you could use a normal 20 amp, you know, that's 12 gauge, 12.2. You could use a normal 20 amp, 12.2 breaker as long as it's within about 100 feet. There's some fall off, 80% utilization. Get an electrician to help you, but not a big deal to run a 220 outlet just for your computer. And yeah, 220 will work just fine as an input voltage for this power supply. So you're future-proofing yourself. It's like, oh yeah, 220 volts in my computer power supply, not a problem. There you go. Now in the box, the configuration, you might be saying, wait a minute, there's only 2 12V2 connections here. There's 2 direct 12V2 connections, but in the box you have standard dual 8-pin to 600 watt connector, a straight through 600 watt to 600 watt connector, your motherboard connector, as well as this host labeled cable. This host labeled cable is designed to plug into the 12V2 connection, but then give you 2 standard 6+3 PCIe GPU style power connectors. You also have the more standard 8-pin to dual 6-pin. So this is the 8-pin at the power supply end, and then the 6-pin, 6+2 connections for the GPU end. So there are several different cables here in the box for connecting to the GPU, depending on which connections at the power supply end are available and what kind of a GPU you're connecting. So if you need to connect GPUs that have the 6+2 8-pin connections, that's covered. If you have GPUs that have the 12V2 600 watt connection, that's covered. And the cables are labeled. So 600 watt to 600 watt in this case. In the case where you're going to use a more standard connection, but you need the connections on the power supply end, this 12V2 connection plugs into the power supply end, but then gives you normal 6+2 PCIe power. The reason Silverstone has designed it this way is that it basically covers every use case. This would even cover the use case where you needed to use 35090s, except that 35090s is going to use more power than this can deliver. Now this is one of the most creative products that I've seen in a long time. Oh, is he getting a 360 AIO out of the box? I am getting a 360 AIO out of the box. What about a 360 AIO could possibly be creative to warrant such high praise? Dual CPU, 360mm radiator. Cooling a total capacity of up to 800 watts. So XE360P, we've covered the XE360 before. We use it in builds around here in the office. In fact, this is our XE360 with the 192 core AMD CPU. This is being tested with Ubuntu 25.04, which is showing some pretty significant performance uplifts due to software optimizations on Zen 5. Zen 5, once again, mind-blowing. And of course, the CXL devices working great on our Supermicro platform, all in our Silverstone 4U short depth case. Now, I've also ordered some Silverstone 5U short depth cases. Those aren't here yet, but I will have those soon. This case, as a workstation case, is great. It gets the job done. It keeps everything cool, and that 360mm radiator, even with our monster AMD EPYC CPUs running at 450 watts and beyond, yeah, it works great. In fact, the same cooler will work on EPYC or Xeon, but you mind the brackets. And so this is for, you know, the 12 memory channel EPYC CPU. If you need something that's more Threadripper-esque, you could do that. Dual socket Threadripper? No, dual socket Threadripper is not a thing, but dual socket AMD EPYC in this, yeah, very much a thing. 360mm radiator is great, and that'll fit in our 4U or our 5U chassis. So this is a path to supporting an SSI EEB motherboard in a relatively compact case with adequate 800 watts of cooling. So we're gonna do a full build with these. As a reminder, if you're interested in the XE360 4677, same cooler, but it's bundled with the 4677 adapter, that is what this looks like. This is the Seta H2, highly versatile, high cooling capacity gaming / workstation chassis. Got a little bit of shipping damage on the side here, but that's okay. This is gonna be what holds our dual 5090. So yeah, fun times. At a time when other manufacturers are making the plates and side panels of their cases thinner, Silverstone is going thicker. This would be a workplace injury. OSHA would be concerned about this side panel. And I swear I didn't set this up ahead of time. Dual GPU support brackets. Built right in, it's already there. And yes, you have 8 expansion slots, so the extra tall motherboards want something to hang off the end, that'll work, that's not a problem. Now, as I get my parts together for part 2 of this video, this is what, you know, what we're talking about when we're talking about server class motherboards. This is a Gigabyte MZ72HB0. I reviewed this forever ago. This has been running 24/7 basically ever since. It's got a pair of EPYC 7773s in it, 7773X. So pretty much the fastest CPUs you can get. And look, 2 sockets. This is what we're going to use for our dual configuration. 512 gigs of memory per socket. This is a really, really nice platform to use for open source stuff development. AI, gonna run dual 5090s in here. And yes, with the dual 5090s, we will be right up against our 1650 watt power limit for our power supply. This is pretty much the North American limit. And for AI and computational fluid dynamics, where you're mixing things running on a GPU and things running on a CPU, this should make a really interesting, excellent test platform. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to talk about the specifics of the workload, but I don't know, the level 1 community is wild and interesting, and there's a lot of talented folks there. The Seta H2 also, now that I've got a little bit more mileage with it, I mean, everything is metal. Be steel, my beating heart. It is so awesome that there's basically no plastic. I mean, there's very little plastic on this case. Even the front, like, that's why it is the way that it is. I get it. I get what Silverstone is up to here. So what's not to love? This video is running a little long, so I'm gonna stop here about the Silverstone accessories. It's like this has become the Silverstone enthusiast, but it's because I've gotten a lot of steel, and also the power supply was hugely impressive for our RTX 6000 forum members. And so I've got to build a workstation here. I don't know if I'm gonna do the dual CPU configuration. I might go dual EPYC in this, but we may also do Threadripper. I don't know. I've got to do some more testing. If you want to see what I'm working on or chat more about your own projects, hit me up in the forum at Level 1 Techs. I'm signing out, and I'll see you there.